This episode of Recording Studio Rockstars is brought to you by Soundporter Mastering, OWC, Atom Audio, API Audio, JZ Microphones, Spectra 1964, and Isotope. In fact, you're hearing my voice right now through the JZ pop filter on the JZ BB29 microphone, through the Spectra 1964 STX600 mic pre-complementer, and Isotope RX and Ozone, all recorded safely onto an OWC Mercury Extreme Pro 6G SSD. So get ready to rock.
If you get comments back constantly that you have too much 200 hertz in your mix, that will probably mean that you don't have enough 200 hertz in your room. So you're adding extra to make it feel equalized on your system. Just walk it back one step. Don't put so much 200 hertz in. Learn to listen through it, being a little bit uncomfortable, feeling a little bit 200 hertz light, and your mix will probably be just fine. It'll probably translate really well outside of the room.
Welcome to Recording Studio Rockstars. I'm Lid Shaw, and this is the podcast created to help you become a rock star of the recording studio. Whether you're in the studio or working remotely, the Envoy Pro FX from OWC lets you record from anywhere with confidence, pushing USB technology bandwidth to the max of 2,800 megabytes per second over Thunderbolt. Transfer tracks in seconds and take your sessions with you anywhere you go. Built for the road, the OWC Envoy Pro FX is waterproof, dustproof, and crushproof. Find the new Envoy Pro FX and all your storage needs at macsales.com/rockstars. JZ Mics brings you the ultimate futuristic pop filter for your studio, built from solid metal parts that won't break and a flexible gooseneck for easy placement. The JZ pop filter uses a unique waveguide design that prevents plosives from getting through to the mic while allowing important high frequencies for clarity. Plus, it looks super cool and you're hearing my voice on it right now. Use the limited time coupon ROCKSTARS to get 20% off this amazing pop filter from jzmic.com.
When I master a song, I'm immersed and committed to a sonic fidelity from start to beyond finished. Hi, I'm Brian Murphy of Soundporter Mastering. My goal in every master is to help you prepare so that you're not compromising your timeline, budget, or your mix. My iterative process helps build a relationship with you so that you don't have to ever second guess your mix. Let's pull back the curtains on mastering because there's no secrets here. Send me your mix and I'll give you free feedback or a free master demo. Just hit me up at soundporter.com.
Hey Rockstars, it's your host Lid Shaw. Welcome back to Recording Studio Rockstars, bringing you into the studio to learn from recording professionals so that you can make your best record ever and be a rock star of the studio yourself. My guest today is Piper Payne, a mastering engineer based out of Nashville, Tennessee, where she works on albums for independent artists and major labels. In spring of 2019, Piper joined the famed Infrasonic Mastering team, merging her successful Oakland studio, Neato Mastering, with the Nashville-based company owned by Pete Lyman. Piper is a trustee of the Recording Academy, and she's co-chair of the P&E Wing Steering Committee. She's a governor of the Audio Engineering Society, and she is the co-founder and co-chair of the AES Diversity and Inclusion Committee, as well as an active member of Women's Audio Mission, and she serves on the board of soundgirls.org. In addition, Piper is a keeper of vinyl quality control and a consultant for vinyl record pressing plants, and is opening her own vinyl manufacturing plant in Nashville in mid-2021. She's been an audio professor and guest lectures often about mastering and recording. Piper began her career with a BFA in audio from the University of Michigan, continuing her graduate education in audio at the University of Stavanger in Norway. Did I pronounce that right?
Stavanger.
It sounds better when you say it.
Just put my voice in there.
I'm not even going to edit that one out. That'll just be us talking in the intro. So, Rockstars, Piper has a diverse background in musical styles. She is a drummer and knows that the best outcome of every project is that it has to feel good. So we'll probably talk a little bit about that. As an engineer, Piper's focused on technical quality and correctness. So we'll want to dig into that some more as well. But at the end of the day, mastering is about format conversion and quality control so the projects get what they need. Piper's mastered a wide variety of music, including nationally renowned artists Third Eye Blind, Leanne Rimes, The Go-Go's, Madame Gandhi, Geographer, the Steven Universe soundtrack, Basement, 100th, Electro Domestico. That's cool. That sounds like, what's Will Ferrell in Elf? He's like, so I'm going on a tangent here.
That's Jane Weedland's solo like personal project where she has a friend duo, Pietro and Jane have this band called Electro Domestico, and they have had me master some records for them. But apparently, Electro Domestico means appliance in Italian.
Oh, cool. Nice.
Like literally it.
Electro Domestico. No, I was thinking of that scene where in Elf where he goes up and he's like, Francisco. That's fun to say, Francisco. Electro Domestico.
I'll tell her you said.
All right. All right. I'm going on a tangent here, rock stars. If you can't tell, my voice might sound a little different because I'm joining you from my office space with a little bit of a portable setup while we paint the studio. So Please welcome Piper Payne to Recording Studio Rockstars. Piper, are you ready to rock?
Hell yeah.
Nice. Great to see you again. I haven't seen you in a while. We're still mid-pandemic and all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. But it looks like Piper and I have a little bit of video going, so I can see that you are sort of sitting yet in a studio. I mean, I think you're at home, but you've got what looks like a pretty awesome setup in front of you. Tell us a little bit about where you are right now.
Yeah, this is our little setup at home. There is a custom built API legacy sort of Franken console here made out of a bunch of 7600 channel strips and 7800, 8200. And then I also have just the front end of my normal mastering system. We can dig in on this a little bit later, but I have just the front end of my mastering system so I can do a little bit of load in, load out, editing from home, and just try and hunker down as much as possible where we have the big mastering facility in Green Hills, which I'm sure you've been to a million times. I don't
know about a million times, but I've been there and it's awesome.
Several 100,000 at least. And it's there for me to go and work. I try and distance as much as possible, but I do all my captures and stuff from there and then come home and take care of stuff here. What you can't see, Lidge, is all of the instruments and all of the acoustics stuff on the back wall over here. We got a ton of guitar amps, drums, keyboards. There's a Rhodes behind me. And then you also can't see the wall of equipment right in front of me with a bunch of stuff out of Catherine's, my partner's A room. And then just a bunch of effects and things and a bunch of meters and stuff over on this side. So when we moved into the house, I thought this would be the perfect place to put just a part-time studio, a cool little place for people to come and hang, my friends to come out from the Bay Area and come stay. There's a guest room and a bathroom and everything all down here too. So it's kind of like its own little self-contained place, which is super cool. But it's, after the first couple of months of the pandemic, we sort of realized that we had to dedicate some space for me to be able to still get my work done and spend as little time as possible at the big facility in Green Hills. Although everybody there, we all have this little pod. We early on we came up with sort of a social pact to say like, okay, we're not going to go out and be unsafe. We're going to be, we're going to take all of the guidelines we possibly can. We're only going to go to work and to home and grocery shopping when we absolutely need to. And that was a decision, I think, a very wise one now that I think about it, by Pete. Early on even as early as the end of March, early April, where Pete had basically said like, all right, we're going to do everything we can. We have the ability to continue working as much as possible. So we all have to be really focused on staying safe and being able to serve our clients and take care of them. And this was while I had a lot of colleagues, like folks that work like on the movie lots and the Capitol and like some of the bigger facilities that had to shut down completely. We were able to still keep working and keep serving our clients. I think that was one of the things that then led to us having one of the best years on record, which is really hard to say out loud because I'm just very grateful that we were able to. We were able to keep the work coming in, keep the clients taken care of, keep our own bottom line sorted out, where a lot of our friends and colleagues have lost lots of income, if not their businesses or family members or, some of them their lives. And it's been really tough to watch, but I am grateful that we made some smart decisions really early on to try and stay safe and keep our clients happy.
Well, it sounds like you guys have a good, teamwork mentality for having a shared studio space, which is great.
Yeah, very lucky for that. So all my equipment that I went out and got back in, I went out and closed down my room in Oakland and brought everything out here. So it's all still in storage. My big PMCs are in the guest room in the flight cases above me, and all the rest of my equipment and everything's ready to go into a room when it's time. But right now, we're just gonna be as careful and safe and sort of keep hunkered down until it's really safe again to build another room one day. So,
but yet we're talking about mastering. I mean, you'd think mastering would be one of the things where you don't have to think about that at all because you're just by yourself in a room a lot, right? Or do you have attended sessions as well and still a bunch of people coming and going?
Yeah, no attended sessions whatsoever. We have a company policy about that from day one. Basically, we shut down attended sessions to make sure everybody stayed safe. Mastering, mastering can be done pretty much anywhere if it's the room that you're working in and you're comfortable with. I felt lucky that early on, I actually had been doing virtual sessions over like Source Connect and Audio Movers and Zoom and all that stuff. I had been working in that realm for a long time because a lot of my clients are on the West Coast and I was here in Nashville working. So, I felt really comfortable working that way. A lot of folks I think it took a little bit of a learning curve to get up to speed on that workflow and way of having attended sessions. But it's kind of neat because I can still see all my clients and interact with them the same way I would if they were sitting right behind me. Now they're just on a screen in front of me. But the technology that is available to do this kind of thing, it's so weird to think about that. Like if this pandemic had happened 5 years ago, we wouldn't have the technology we have now to be able to keep a music industry alive. It's kind of nuts.
What's some of the stuff that you discovered about doing that kind of remote thing? Because I mean, that's been something that was interesting, I think, to us in certain ways for a long time. And, the idea of being able to work with people that are across the country or whatever, but, include people in a session when they weren't able to travel to the studio. And that will probably continue on a certain level. So with using Source Connect, for example, what are some of the details of using that you found that you had to figure out? And you're like, yeah, if you try and use it, remember to do these things.
Yeah. Well, first of all, the sound of encoded audio streaming, from here to the West Coast and back, the sound of that is not going to be the sound your client is going to end up with at the end of the day. Even something like Source Connect or Source Live, which I wanted to use from I've been a supporter of theirs from pretty much day one. Many years ago, I started using it to have to try and grow my clientele because I was in this not a small market. I mean, the Bay Area is not a small market, but I sort of had reached the upper limits of the clientele I could get, could work with there and then set my sights on Los Angeles. And I ended up setting up kind of some relationships with studios down there that would be able to do Source Connect and Source Live sessions for LA clients to listen in a good room in a good studio, but then me stream my mastering sessions to them and be able to see them and talk to them and develop a relationship. So that's something I've been working on for a really long time. But one of the things that I learned during that that period of time was, it is so much more, it is a much more successful mastering project, when the client is able to listen in their own space on a system that they're comfortable with. Even though, yes, we are streaming audio to them, it's, even in audio movers, it can be high enough quality that, yeah, there might be some artifacts, there might be some, breaks in the sound by audio dropping out or something like that. But for the most part, I have way fewer second guess style revision requests when a client is able to listen from their own space versus when they're sitting behind me in a mastering session with a room that they maybe have only been in once or twice, listening to their record for the first time on a system that they don't know, and they just sort of have to trust me. Well, this way they can actually listen to that record and listen to the before and after the master in a space that they know well and are comfortable in. And I really think that results in fewer issues. One dirty little secret is that it results in far fewer issues of things that they've heard in detail in my studio. Like when they're physically there, they would hear little things, little pops and ticks and stuff that I would, as a mastering engineer, it's my job to make sure that stuff doesn't go through if it's not part of the artistic intent of the record. And so with stuff like, I'd throw it in RX and clean up the pop or the tick or the weird edit or whatever. Like, the engineer forgot to put a fade on the sample or whatever at this specific time, I'll go in and fix it. But when an artist or a producer is sitting behind me and they hear that, or they watch me clean it for them in Isotope, they can never unhear it. So then the project is then destined to go through multiple, hey, let me just send you a new I fixed that thing myself. Let me just send you a new mix. And then it turns into this nasty, cyclical process, which I cannot stand.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you, that's one thing that, attended sessions more often result in revisions based on things like that have nothing to do with my work or my, what I did. But that is a dirty little secret, which is a lot of times if I can clean stuff or fix things that they never heard before and they will never hear again, it results in a much easier process for mastering a record.
That's funny because when I've done attended mastering sessions, I have noticed that there can be a moment of like sort of retraining my ears towards something. There were things I remember picking up on, but those were sort of like the first mastering sessions I attended. Now, if I go, I just sort of enjoy being there. I'm just like drinking the fancy coffee and,
yeah.
And just loving getting to sit in the fancy studio for a while. But the one thing that I find consistently helps me is to take the mix out to the car, or to take the master out to the car, early in the process and just go, let me just go see if we're in that ballpark. Now, do you find that that's useful too? Or is that yet another like click finder, geeky thing that I'm doing? And maybe it's better if we don't do things like that.
No, I think that any process that helps you be more comfortable and be able to move forward with the project with trust in your engineer and their abilities and their sound is a good thing. And also, like, it's also just research. I mean, we learn a lot by having your feedback too. I mean, no mastering engineer is perfect, and we're not, hopefully none of us are above saying like, okay, cool, like, you heard too much bass in your car. All right, it's not your car's fault. Maybe it's something I'm doing. Let me investigate that. One of the ways I usually get around that is to let the attendee listen to their own stuff on my system for a while, or even just pull up like a Spotify or an iTunes playback of whatever they want to listen to get their ears acclimatized. And then also moving around the room, like hopefully they're sitting in one place and not moving around too much, because that will also then cloud their judgment. But yeah, I'm all for it, man. Like whatever you want to do that makes you comfortable and happy, that is totally cool with me. But one of the things about mastering and about audio, and this is just a philosophical thing, is that I'm sure that you're never like this, but there are some people out there that actually don't want to finish the record. Like they will come up with any excuse to not finish it, where they just tweak and tweak and tweak and tweak. And at that point you have to think about the fact that like a record or a recording is a snapshot in time of where you are as an artist, or where your abilities are or your resources are as an engineer serving the project. And mastering is no different. But at some point we got to call it done and move forward.
Yeah, that's good advice. I mean, I think that's definitely a thing people struggle with. And I've got some stuff I need to finish myself, but I don't know if I'm not trying to do new revisions. I'm just trying to get the dang thing done.
Yeah. And I'm all for like, I believe that it should be as good as it possibly can be. So no corners cut, I'm not ever going to leave. If I hear a click or something, I can never leave it there. Like I am that kind of perfectionist, but I also can say like, okay, that's as good as I can possibly do. And I know that I'm having a good day, and I know that you've done everything you can for the project, and I've done everything I can for the project, and it's ready. It's time to fly.
You may already know that iZotope creates the very best smart plugins for mixing and mastering. But did you know that now you can get them all through iZotope's new affordable subscription bundles? Get Music Production Suite Pro for only $24.99 per month, or Producers Club for only $19.99 per month. Start your 7-day free trial subscription now, or go to iZotope.com/rockstars and use the code ROCK10 to get 10% off any individual plugin purchase. Coupon not valid for subscriptions or Spire Studio. The Spectra 1964 BBDI passive direct box is perfect for recording deep bass that will make your mixes sound huge. Plug that into a C610 comp limiter, and as founder Bill Cheney points out, it'll move your pant leg. But what if you want to record direct keyboards? Spectra 1964 now offers the stereo BBDI 2 with custom wound high Z transformers for big headroom, virtually flat response, and a 15 dB input pad at spectra1964.com. So let me ask you this question. It might sound dumb, but what is mastering?
Ooh, what a great question. Mastering is in its purest form. Mastering is taking one recording on one format and translating that same sound into a recording or a playback system on another format. So it would be taking a bunch of high-res recorded high-res mixes and getting them ready for vinyl. What that sound translates to make it present as great as possible on vinyl, same way it did on high-res, or taking a group of high-res files and getting them ready to go on CD, or taking even a collection of songs in the digital domain and getting them ready to be a full finished cohesive album in the digital domain. It's sort of that sound of translating what you're starting with to where it's destined to go. And one of the most important parts of that process is quality control. The mastering engineer is hopefully going to be the last person to make adjustments to the sound or to create the deliverable master to make lots of copies of that record for distribution, whether it's going out onto CD. We make what's called a DDP master for CD replication, or if it's going out onto vinyl, we make what's called a lacquer master, which then gets a metal negative made of it and then gets pressed into many copies on a big hydraulic press. There's nothing different from a set of files that you send me that is getting ready to go out into Spotify from either of those other two processes. Every playback system has a sound, and if you're starting with sound A and it has to go out onto sound B, C, and D, it has to present in a great way without errors, without issues, technically correct, and getting out there to the listener the way the artist intended. The third most important thing, I think, is sort of a more abstract one, and that is to help the artist or the producer or the engineer through the process of getting out of the creative recording process and in and through the manufacturing process. I noticed when I was first getting started that a lot of mastering engineers would say, okay, I mastered the record. It's louder. It sounds better. Here's your DDP. Bye. And I would see so many artists get, kind of confused or not be able to get through the release process or the manufacturing process of the album. And even now, like digital distribution, if you say who's distributing this or how are you getting this out to streaming, maybe only 50% of independent artists have a plan for that or know what the best way to do that is before the mastering process. And so I believe that mastering is not just about quality control and format conversion, but it's also about helping the project through into the manufacturing process and making sure that everything that I know about CD replication or about vinyl or about digital distribution is able to be passed along to the artists so that they can make the best choices for how to release their music.
Now, what do you think about the intent when Metallica said, Master of puppets, I'm pulling your strings? What were they referring to? No, just kidding. No,
exactly.
That's great. And, I kind of dig how you break it down into this sort of matter of fact process of transferring it from one stage of the record making process to another, instead of it being a discussion about,
I use this limiter or
well, sparkles and magic dust and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. Even though we know that's what you really use when you're mastering.
Yeah. Yes, I have this. This is a voodoo knob. And no, I'm just kidding. It's kind of funny because I think about that all the time. And like everybody keeps saying like, oh, well, mastering's this black art or this is like this, special thing that no one ever really knows what they do. And I'm like, well, I mean, it's just EQ, compression, stereo manipulation a little bit, and then just knowing what the fuck you're supposed to do with it.
There you go.
Like that's the hard part. Like that's the magic, and that's the voodoo, if you will, is to be able to hear something in its finished mix state and then know what it could or should be in its mastered state, rather than just saying, oh, this is too, this needs more loudness or this needs more stereo width or whatever. It's more like this artist or this producer is just bringing me this thing that's their baby, and they come to me because they have faith that I know what it's supposed to be when it's done. That's the magic, actually, I think. And that really just comes from years of listening and discipline and paying attention and having the right mentors and knowing when something's really, really done. That's I think maybe the thing that they're referring to when they say magic or sparkle or whatever.
Yeah. Well, so let's talk a little bit about what some of the tools are that you use. So, you're sitting in front of, you said you've got an API legacy console there. I don't know if that's part of the mastering or if that's part of the fun studio stuff.
That's just part of the fun, like production studio stuff. We also have, Catherine has a 5088 as well, but that's over in storage right now. But my actual mastering console, when it's all put together, and I have a very similar console to what we have over at Infrasonic here in Nashville, which is the one I use every day. That starts out with a mastering transfer console, which is ours are currently an Maslec MTC1. And that's basically like a patch bay for all of the compressors, EQs, limiters, and it also has like things like meter outs, and it has a really, really great monitor control section. And it also has one other very specific thing, if you're going to be working with vinyl at all, is an elliptical filter.
I love a good elliptical filter in the morning.
Oh man. I tried to get on the elliptical filter machine, and I just fell off because I'm not that coordinated. No, I'm just joking. The one important thing about a mastering console of any sort is that it is transparent enough to tell you exactly what's happening all the way through the chain. And when you decide to put in insert 1, 2, or 3, or 4, it's not coloring that sound of the equipment on the insert. So if you think about how a recording or mixing studio has a patch bay where you have actual physical cables that are going to reroute signal. This is the same way. Every piece of gear is plugged into this thing like a patch bay, but I can decide when to engage just by a push of a button, when to engage the mini massive or the GML, and then what order exactly they go in. And that's all, most of the time mastering engineers, we have sort of a predetermined chain, but there are some situations where we might not want to have that particular compressor on, or we might want to change the order of this EQ and compressor or something like that. That's what a mastering console lets you do. So again, it's like you're able to listen to the mix, and then you're able to engage whatever gear you need, and then you're able to listen to the master after that gear. There are lots of other points that you can listen in the chain as well, but the most important thing for a mastering studio is really the room, the engineer, and then I believe the monitoring, which would be the mass select. You also have to keep in mind mastering, converters. They're very, very important. Right now, I'm happily using my Radar Ultra Nyquist converters in my normal mastering days. But we've over in at the studio here in Nashville, we have tried out pretty much everything. Recently, there's a couple of Crane Song Quantums that are the D to A's, and then the A to D is the Rupert Neve Designs MBC. The Master Bus, I think it's Master Bus Converter is what it stands for. But that's a brand new unit made by Rupert Neve, and it is insane. So
and that's doing conversion.
That's doing the A to D. Yeah. So mastering engineers, you'll also notice like mastering engineers we need generally for stereo, we need 4 channels of D to A. So 2 for the mix and 2 for the finished master. And then 1 set of A to Ds, one like really good set of A to Ds for just recording in the master. So
right, because you're going to take the mix, even if it's digital, turn it into analog, run it through some stuff, and then capture it again, right?
Right. So I want to be able to listen to the mix itself, and then I want to be able to listen to after the master recording. I want to be able to hear that too. So I kind of need 2 sets of D to A's, but only 1 set of A to D's. So the cool thing about that is like I get to choose what I want, and I get to like dedicate a significant portion of my budget of studio build out as a mastering engineer to those converters, because you really only need 4 channels and then 2 channels. So that's pretty cool.
Just out of curiosity, if you even went out of converters into analog, went through no gear at all and recaptured it through your high-end converters, can you hear a sound improvement just from that sometimes?
I will say that the only reason I would ever do that would be if I had to capture in a 16-bit file or lower the resolution. And it might be better to do that in the through an analog domain pass like that. There used to be a way we used to do it to make CDs called a Zinman loop, and you would that was before there was such a thing as an easy way of doing sample rate conversion or dither that was a high enough quality. What we would do is we'd have 2 sets, an extra pass of audio to make the CD master, the DDP, and you would actually play out the high res file through just the converters, and then record back in at 1644. And that's how you got your 1644 without degrading the sound in a significant way.
Without having to do a bunch of number crunching.
Right. Otherwise, I mean, I am just enough of a purist to say that, you're probably not going to gain anything by doing a computer translation through an analog pass to another computer translation. Yeah, you'll hear it, but will it be better? I don't know. Maybe not. It might be it might add something that you really like to the sound. And at that point, is that wrong? No. But is it purely a benefit to the project? Probably also not.
So digital versus analog mastering, what are some of the things that you want to say about when, is it even a good question to ask about one versus the other? Or is it more like, how are you going to use both those tools? And that's the best way
Totally.
to do it.
It's a very valid question. There are some mastering engineers that work only in the digital domain. There are some mastering engineers that work only in the analog domain. I am one that works in kind of right in the middle, where I have a few digital processes that are probably going to happen on every record, and then an analog pass that I will use because I believe in analog and tubes and real real physical elements for the electrical signal to pass through, that usually will result in a more musical sounding record than just processed only in the digital domain. There are a few things that go into that, and a few reasons why, like even if you're working only in plugins, I believe in doing things, capturing things like an analog pass would, because you're going to hear stuff that you won't hear by doing an offline bounce. You're going to notice that playing back through each song and actually sitting and listening through it is part of the art of mastering to begin with, spending that time with it rather than just hitting bounce. But also you're probably going to notice when you've overdone it, which is very, very easy to do in the digital domain. Now, we used to get records in where I was able to master the entire thing all analog, simply out of the mix channels through the analog chain and then back in through the master input. And we'd be able to create a beautiful, big, loud master. Nowadays, there's a lot of modern production that's happening where the mixes, although they're not clipping, they're very good, but they are very, very loud. And so in order to do anything with it, I have to do some control work in the digital domain before it gets to the analog gear, because the analog gear, and even at a very high quality calibration, we simply can't deal with it. It's like trying to drive a bus down a bike path, right? Like you got to do something to shrink the bus or make the path bigger, which we're not making the path bigger, so we got to deal with it. And so there's ways that we have to adapt. I still, there are some pop projects that have been done 100% in the digital domain because they were just simply too loud for me to bring them out to the analog console, or nothing was being added by bringing it out through the console and through the gear that I wasn't able to achieve in the digital domain in a more clean way. I think, unfortunately, it depends. But if there is ever a specific situation that requires an all digital or an all analog or a hybrid of both, then I'm going to take it.
Yeah. So there are just some projects where you just got to take the bus lane.
Yeah.
There's no getting around it.
That's right.
Atom Audio can provide all your monitor needs, whether you are setting up a first-time home studio for recording music or podcasts, or a world-class studio for professional mixing and mastering. Their unique accelerated ribbon tweeter design is famous for creating smooth, detailed imaging that let your speakers disappear into your music, allowing you to focus on the mix. Learn how to set up your studio monitors and control room for great sound, plus lots of other cool studio tips at atom-audio.com/education. If you're ready to upgrade your studio to the famous sound of API's large format consoles, then you're ready for the Box, a small format console featuring the same analog circuitry and original 2520 op-amp design that has made API famous for 50 years. Record through 8 world-class mic pre-channels, mix through 24 smooth-as-glass faders, and upgrade your home studio to legendary status. API now offers a virtual console experience, allowing you to get a personalized online demo of the Box at apiaudio.com. So, okay, very cool. Well, you mentioned your speakers. You talked about the importance of monitoring. Mm-hmm. Talk a little bit more about that. And also for those of us who are just setting up speakers and for mixing, mastering, listening, whatever, how important is the speaker placement, and what might you want to say about that? I mean, for example, you are in a home studio environment. I don't know if you had set that up recently just for this year to be able to work there, or what your thoughts are about that.
Yeah, this home studio I share with my partner Catherine, who but there's a pair of ATCs on the bridge because she really likes ATCs, and she really likes ATCs on the bridge, so that's where they are. And I just had to tune the room to sound as good as it possibly can there for her. But
and when you say bridge, you mean on the bridge, the meter bridge of the console.
The meter bridge of the console,
yeah.
And then I have a pair of very small PMCs that I use here at home because, to be honest, I can't find 4 strong people to carry my big PMCs down the stairs right now in a pandemic, because those things weigh like probably about 300 pounds for each cabinet, and there are 4 of them. So I just haven't set up the big ones yet. I probably won't set them up here at the house. I'll probably set them up in a facility somewhere. But the speaker placement, I believe, is more important than the speaker choice itself. If you are going to set up a pair of speakers, no matter what size they are, they need to be in phase. You need to, at the very least, observe the equilateral triangle rule, where you have the left speaker and the right speaker and the listener are set up in an equilateral triangle. And then observe the bass tip-up rules around speakers. When you put on any, if you have a speaker against 2 vertices, then you're going to have technically 6 dB of added bass. Then you put it in a corner, you're going to have another 3 dB added. So you have to pay attention to those very, very basic acoustics rules when you go to set up your speakers. But I personally have a pair of very, very, very large PMC speakers that I love dearly, and they cost as much as a house. And I don't think that I will ever let them go or work on another set. We have a pair of the exact same set at the studio here in Green Hills. Pete has excellent taste in speakers, I believe. We have literally the exact same pair, but mine are a cherry finish and his are black. So it's kind of fun. But
nice.
And then we have another set in the LA studio as well, which is kind of cool. But the importance of spending at least a little bit of money on speakers will get you a really long way. They don't have to be more than a few $1,000. Even if you're only working on a set, only working on a set of what you can afford. The more important thing is to know that system really, really well, meaning once you set it up and you think you've got it set in a really good spot, don't mess with it. Like, don't change it. Just get to know it. Listen to every great quality record you can on your system. And yes, learn how things translate out of your room into the car. But if you've set your system up and you've been listening to it for a month, and then you go and you take a record out to the car that you just mixed on it and you realize that it's got a problem, maybe don't change it immediately. Maybe learn to work through that problem and learn to work around it. And that will make you a better mixer in the long run. Because if you go to a studio that has a monitoring problem, and you have to work in there, you need to know how to listen around that monitoring problem. You can't just say to the owner, like, oh, I'm going to move your soffit mounted speakers for you just for this one day that I'm mixing, right? I think that it's good practice and good discipline to learn a system and learn how to mix around issues. Yeah, if you consistently find that you have way too much 200 hertz in your mixes and you've figured out a way that you could adjust your system to maybe fix that so you don't have to listen through to not enough 200 hertz, then do that. But if you get comments back constantly, or you've taken it out to different systems and you realize that you have too much 200 hertz in your mix, that will probably mean that you don't have enough 200 hertz in your room. So you're adding extra to make it feel equalized on your system. Just walk it back one step. Don't put so much 200 hertz in. Learn to listen through it, being a little bit uncomfortable, feeling a little bit 200 hertz light, and your mix will probably be just fine. It'll probably translate really well outside of the room. And you will have learned something and learned to listen through something in the process.
Yeah, that's good advice. Maybe we'll just touch one more time on speaker placement. So if somebody's starting out in a new home studio environment, I imagine a way to do it. Because I haven't really been doing that. I mean, I've sort of had a dedicated studio for a while, but if I was going to set up in a room, I'd probably, take the stands, take the seat that I'm going to sit in, sit and just like with a pair of speakers on stands and a seat and just kind of listen in a couple of
Mhm.
spots first, right? Until you
Right.
start arriving at something that seems right. And then moving the speakers to and from the back wall,
Yeah.
just sort of deciding. But I think, the funny thing you see a lot in people's studios is just not even realizing that, like, dude, you're kind of off to one side of the room. Your one speaker's in the
Yeah.
corner and the other one's by the window. It's like,
Yeah.
I think you need to just recognize rock stars to make sure that you are choosing a wall that has symmetry to it so you can start. Now, have you ever seen anybody set up a pair of speakers where you're facing the corner and do that successfully, where there's some symmetry, but you're sort of
But there's like a
studio's
corner?
is coming at you
interesting.
from a corner.
I actually have thought about that a lot. I mean, because when we were gonna put this room together, there's a corner right here. And you can't see it, but this entire room is windows. So there's a wall of windows right behind you, a massive picture window here, and the back doors that you can see are just a bunch of windows. And so at that point, I had to make a decision of like, how do I want to work down here, or how do we want this place to feel? And for me, it was the picture window looking out into the woods is much, much more important to me, that's kind of the focal point than anything else.
Because if Bigfoot showed up, you'd want to know it right away, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, actually, Bigfoot would never be here. All Bigfoots live in Saskatchewan.
Oh, okay. All right. Then you're safe. Bigfoot's not known to be a long distance runner, I don't think.
That was my one terrible joke that I'll give you. The cool thing about knowing how speakers work and how sound comes out of them is that you can kind of tune your way around issues if you have a blank slate. Now, if you don't have a blank slate and you're kind of forced, you're the only one place you can put your desk is in your bedroom in that one corner, then let's do it. But what you have to do at that point is create some sort of a boundary on the other side that will mimic the wall. Like, let's just say you have a wall on your left side and nothing on your right side. You might want to create some sort of a boundary on your right side so that at least those speakers are doing the first reflection off the side walls, then hitting your ears in the same way, so that you don't have the way, like, let's walk it back a little bit. Okay, so speakers, when you're having something playing back on a properly tuned system, the sound coming out of the left speaker and the right speaker, if it's the same common sound playing back at the same time, it will reach your ears at exactly the same time, therefore feeling mono. If you have a slight difference in the timing of what's coming out of the left speaker and the right speaker, it will reach your ears and feel what we call stereo, phenomenon of how we hear stereo. Now, if you want to play back, if you go back to having a good system properly tuned, and you play back the same sound out of both speakers at the same time, and you have a boundary on one side and not a boundary on the other, then yes, your direct sound will reach your ears at exactly the same time. But the second most important thing is the first set of first reflections that come off of the boundaries of the room, which would be the back wall, the ceiling, the floor, and the side walls. Well, if one speaker has a side wall that gets that reflection that reaches your left ear at a certain time, and the right speaker doesn't have that boundary that will go all the way to the next wall and then reach your ear, it's going to come in at a different time.
Yeah.
And so it's going to be very, very confusing to your ears and to you as a listener. You have to listen through that problem. So the goal is setting up your speakers perfectly in phase. The way that I would do that is I would set them on a boundary that I know. So for me, if I had a console or I had a desk that I was going to put the speakers down on, the first thing I would do is put like the back of the speakers on the back of the desk, so that you know that they're both in the same plane. Therefore, whatever comes out of them is going to reach my ears at exactly the same time. From there, I would play back something that has a lot of bass information that I know well, and a lot of bass, like bass transient, like a kick drum. And at the point where I'm in an equilateral triangle where both of those speakers are playing back from exactly the same plane, and I have a kick drum and it is directly in the center and full, I might then slightly move my one speaker forward and back just a hair to make sure that that bass note is as full as possible and that it is still dead center. And then I'll call that good for a little while. I'm just going to listen for a bit. And then if I realize that I don't have enough high frequency information, I'm going to toe those speakers in a little bit, keeping them exactly in the same plane, not losing our kick drum fullness. And then to the point where I feel like it's a balanced sound, then I'm going to sit and listen to it that way for a while, So that is, those are simple, very, very simple ways that require almost no measurement other than to make sure that you're probably in an equilateral triangle, or if you're in a space that is very small, you're going to have a smaller equilateral triangle, but not to the point where they're like only 2 feet apart. They have to be, Your speakers have to be far enough apart to create a stereo image, but not so far apart that the center image collapses.
Yeah.
Right? They also have to be far enough away from you that you can play those speakers back at a good level to excite the speaker and excite the room. Because if you play back your system too quiet, you might end up adding too much bass or too much top end, depending on what's going on. It's not going to tell you, it's not going to give you everything you need. So, those are the kinds of things that you kind of have to, if you're setting up a speaker system for the first time, or you're looking into how to improve your system, things like that are going to be really, really helpful that require almost no actual math. Because although I am an engineer, I hate math. I like things when they're simple and elegant and easy to do. Because mastering engineers are not only really good procrastinators, we are also sometimes a little bit lazy. So we always try and pick the path of least resistance.
The Spectra 1964 Custom Shop now offers the STX100D, the big brother to the now famous STX100, a fully discrete mic pre with dual transformer isolated Spectra 101 amplifiers. The STX100D is exactly the same original circuit found in Stax, Arden, Advision, A&M, and Record Plant recording consoles. The sonic performance is identical. Best of all, it will plug into a single space of your standard 500 lunchbox. And if you want to add the sound of the famous Spectra C610 comp limiter, then check out the new STX600 modules, combining the STX100 mic pre and C610 in a single 500 module. That's how you're hearing my voice. Now you can get that same incredible sound in your studio that worked for famous producers like Tom Dowd with the STX mic pre's, BBDI, and comp limiters. Go to Spectra1964.com or call 801-797-0642. Whether you're in the studio or working remotely, the Envoy Pro FX from OWC lets you record from anywhere with confidence. It pushes USB technology bandwidth to the max of 2,800 megabytes per second over Thunderbolt, giving you high-speed audio data and recording and playback. Transfer tracks in seconds and take your sessions with you anywhere you go. Built for the road, the OWC Envoy Pro FX is waterproof, dustproof, and crushproof. Creativity without limits, only from OWC. Imagine never having to worry about your external drive interface again or compatibility from studio to studio. Find the new Envoy Pro FX and all your storage needs at macsales.com/rockstars. iZotope is a secret weapon for your studio that can help you get consistently pro-sounding mixes. And now you can get access to all their plugins through the new subscription options. Only $24.99 per month, Music Production Suite Pro is designed for the serious recording, mixing, and mastering engineer, putting the finishing touches on music, film, and podcasts with fully pro versions of Ozone, RX, Neutron, Nectar, Neoverb, Tonal Balance Control, Visual Mixer, and much more, including free plugin updates. rates. Or for only $19.99 per month, you can join Producers Club to get a suite of industry-leading production, mixing, and mastering plugins, custom presets, royalty-free samples, production courses, and more. Start your 7-day free trial subscription now or go to iZotope.com/rockstars and use the code ROCK10 to get 10% off any individual plugin purchase. Coupon not valid for subscriptions or Spire Studio. Hey, Rockstars, we're back now for the second half of the show. My guest today is Piper Payne, joining us from her studio. And she normally works at Infrasonic Studio. So do you call this Infrasonic right now, like Infrasonic Junior or anything?
Oh, no. We're actually thinking of calling the studio American Bitch. Studio for women and their dogs.
Awesome. Well,
if you've ever seen Best in Show, that's a little line from that. But no, this is really just a little project studio for Catherine. She does a lot of archival work and tape transfer stuff, so she does some of that here. And then we just have an extra console because we can, and we're clearly audio assholes like that. And because if you have one console, why not have another or another? Yeah. And then I just do a little bit of load in, load out editing, QC stuff here from home for the things that I master and capture over at Infrasonic in Green Hills in Nashville.
I agree with you. I think I have about 4 or 5 consoles, and I'm considering getting a new one.
Yeah. I mean, they're like motorcycles. You can't can't have one.
That's right. Well, so now one of the things that you specialize in and have a lot of experience is mastering for vinyl. And I wondered if you wanted to talk about that, and if you wanted to, help us understand how mastering for vinyl is different from regular mastering, or how it's the same.
Yeah.
And I don't even know what, I just said the word regular mastering. I don't even know what that means.
Yeah. Standard modern production mastering is sort of this digital thing that we do where we attempt to get, the biggest, boldest, loudest, most polished sound, or whatever you want to call it. And that's just like a normal sound these days. Back when mastering first started, the only format you would master for at all was vinyl. Mm-hmm. And that definitely predates me by several decades. Even before I was born, that was the standard way of doing it. But you would take a collection of songs on tape, and you would get them mastered to go out on vinyl. Now, a tape machine, playback, and a vinyl record turntable, they're not just different mechanisms for playback, where you have little magnets suspended in plastic going over magnetized heads that are playing back and reading that information and recording that information. And then on a turntable, you have a cantilevered stylus basically riding in the grooves of the record and creating positive and negative matrix of electrical signal that then gets played out through the speakers through the room to your ears. Like, that's a lot of different transducers in the process. It's a lot of translations of that signal from audio suspended in magnetic tape, then getting put into an electrical signal, and then traveling down through a record lathe, maybe through some analog gear EQs or some high frequency limiting and some elliptical filters, as you love, and then getting run through an electrified excited stylus, cutting into soft lacquer on a disc, spinning in a lateral direction. So in one line, a feed screw is sending the cutting head through to the center of the record. And then you go and you put that record, after it's been through the electroprocessing to make a metal negative of it. And then you make stampers, and then you press those stampers into soft PVC that then is your actual vinyl record. Then you take that vinyl record as a consumer and you put it on a turntable, and you end up having, again, this stylus that's now reading the information in the groove, but it's interacting at a different angle to what it was cut at. It was cut in a linear way, but on a turntable, if you can imagine, you have the end of the backside of the tone arm is in one corner of the turntable, and then it plays in an elliptical fashion across the record. So at that point, you have to remember that the stylus is interacting with the grooves very differently even than the way we cut it, which is a different process and a different type of signal than the way that it was recorded on and mixed down onto tape. This was all like, this is incredible that this format even happened, because tape is not a consumer friendly thing. Vinyl is extremely consumer friendly. In addition, you have the jackets and everything else that you can, be excited about to own a vinyl record. But the fact that even back then they were able to come up with this plan of translating the audio of the sound of tape, which has a little bit of hiss and has tons of not a ton of dynamic range, but it has a ton of frequency spectrum in the EQ, and then translating that into cutting into vinyl, which has a much higher noise floor, so less dynamic range, and has a much more band limited frequency response. You can't really cut much above 16 kilohertz, and you can't really cut much below about 30 hertz, and have anything, decent playback or sound good at all. And so the mastering process was that. It was taking this like wacky idea of magnets suspended in tape and finding out the right way to translate that sound onto this other wacky format of cutting grooves into a spinning disc. And then somehow having that played back with a completely different set of rules and angles of incidence on the actual grooves themselves with the stylus. Like, that's amazing.
Yeah.
It's incredible. And that's just what mastering engineers did every day. So in a weird way, that's kind of like normal mastering.
Well, that harkens back to the beginning when you were talking about mastering being converting one format to another. That was very much one format to another, from the original audio through all those stages.
Yeah. Even one of my first mastering mentors told me that, even back in the 50s and 60s, when you wanted to knock on the door and you say, I'm so-and-so, I want to be an engineer. Can I please have a job in the studio? The first thing that they would do is sit you down with the mastering engineer so that you could learn how to listen and learn how to translate what was coming off that tape onto what had to go onto a spinning disc with very different sets of circumstances for quality. And that's how you got your ear training. And now obviously that predates me, so I really don't know if that's true, but I like to think that it is. Yeah,
that's pretty cool. So now I do remember sort of discovering at one point, before I actually got into making records, I had a roommate who was way into hi-fi stuff, and there was the discovery and the conversation about like, oh man, records, vinyl records are where it's at. That's where you really get the hi-fi sound quality. And, we're going back to the late 80s and stuff like that. And hearing you talk about it, though, it's interesting to be reminded that, the frequency response is actually limited. You don't hear above 16, you don't hear below 30. And digital, of course, has evolved a ton from where it was back when CDs first came out. So, and then just also hearing you talk about the difference of the tape transfer to what can go onto the vinyl. I don't know where I'm going with that other than to just say it makes me wonder if, that hi-fi enthusiast who had the reel-to-reel tape was like, maybe did have, kind of an improved sound in a way. I still think that tape is the best quality listening of any record ever. If it was recorded on tape and played back off tape, that's it for me. Yeah.
Now vinyl, one of the things you got to remember now is that almost every vinyl record that you buy in a store or a newer record made, let's just say made since 2000, is probably has gone through at least some digital process. It was recorded on Pro Tools and then, mastered for vinyl, hopefully, or, hopefully by a human that, was using a proper cutting lathe to make real lacquer. And even at that point, yes, we love vinyl because it's an incredible listening experience and it is far superior and far more fun to listen to than just hitting play on Spotify or something. But even, back when CDs were starting to tank a little bit and vinyl was just starting to come back and people were like, oh, vinyl's the thing, it's where it's at. But if you actually look at it, CDs have a far superior response, frequency response, and technically a much higher more headroom, lower noise floor on a digitally recorded CD. But there is just something about vinyl that, even though I know it's like if you're like a gourmet chef and you go to McDonald's, it's like there's just, yes, I know I could make this cheeseburger myself out of my organic, meat from the cow in the backyard and stuff, but man, there's something about a McDonald's cheeseburger that you just like, that you just love. I can talk my way around, the technical specifications of this format, but there's something just really incredible about it. And that's why, when I was doing a lot of mastering work, and I was starting to see more and more vinyl projects come over my desk. And at that time, I didn't have access to a lathe. I just had access to really great mastering engineer mentors that knew everything about the format and could teach me how to create what we call a digital vinyl prep file. So that's a side A, side B that's been, the sound has been compromised in such a way that the lacquer cutter who gets it would just have to do a flat cut. They wouldn't have to do anything crazy. So, I kind of got really used to making vinyl prep masters and got really good results. And when I would get my vinyl back from either a test pressing or something, I was always really stoked because I finally was able to realize the magic of vinyl. And so when I started seeing more and more projects come through, and I started thinking about why artists are making vinyl now. And I realized that it is because when streaming started getting really big, CD sales started to plummet. And that was all cool and fine for like a couple of years. And then when artists realized that they had no real way of recouping their costs through mechanical royalties, they had to make something physical. And vinyl still is the only way. Maybe there's someone out there who's devised some new way that I don't know about yet. But last I checked, vinyl is really the only way to recoup your costs of making your record, because you can get vinyl made for $5 or $6 or $7 a unit. And then you can turn around and sell it for $22, $25, $30 a unit. And if you do that enough times, and you've made it right, that will far exceed anything you're going to make on CDs, and it will far exceed anything else you're going to make on streaming. And outside of selling directly to your fans via Bandcamp on a digital file, you're not going to see that recording money back easily if you're an independent artist. The other thing is that people want to hold something in their hands. They want to hold a real physical object, and they want to look at the liner notes and see like, oh, so-and-so recorded this or so-and-so produced this. And I want to know more about what they're doing. That's still something that streaming companies are not doing properly.
Yeah, it's amazing.
They're not.
You'd think it'd be easy enough for them to do it, but they're not.
It is easy enough. There's just some of it's lack of information. Some of it's lack of being able to verify the information. But there are some cool companies that are able to do it. They just aren't taken off for some reason. But the neat thing about vinyl is, I had so many independent artists and independent clients that were clamoring for some way to make money off their records, and again, after some way of making money after I was done mastering it. What were they going to do to recoup that cost? And I realized that vinyl records were potentially something to look into. And so I've been working on getting vinyl plant that I'm working on here in Nashville, I've been working on it for about a year and a half. And
tell us about that. You're starting your own vinyl production plant.
I am, because I was involved in a plant in Oakland that famously failed. And that was just simply issues with management of funds and things that I had nothing to do with. I was on as the one of the partner in charge of making sure our audio sounded good and was mastered properly. But eventually, the investors that supported me through that, and I was able to build a brand new quality control system that's never been implemented in any plant, because all of the plants that were open at the time were just sort of really, really incredible works that had been around since the 60s, 70s, 80s, that were still in business and still doing things exactly the way that they had always been done, but had been inundated by orders that they can't keep up with. And so even something as simple as, like, if an artist wanted to get vinyl made, they either had to go through a broker that had a direct relationship with the plant and pay a premium for that, or they had to deal directly with the plant and hope for the best via faxed in sales orders and finding their own packaging distributors and things like that.
Wow. And this is because vinyl is taken off faster than Bitcoin?
Yes. Yes. Vinyl outsold CDs last year for the first time. And although vinyl is still a very, very small fraction of what it was back when it was the only consumer format other than, 8 cassettes and 8 tracks and stuff, that system and that industry is still in the world of the 90s, where they were just down to bare bones staff, bare bones business administration, bare bones quality standards, and now they're forced to raise all that stuff up. So I found out that there were ways of helping the industry through quality control, and through some of my partners, we figured out that there were ways of raising the quality of the user experience for someone ordering vinyl and stuff like that. So that's a lot of what we worked on. And so now I'm able to implement a lot of the stuff that I learned through that weird failure in Oakland. I'm able to not only have one of my partners from that is helping me get this one started, Joe, and there is a boom right now, and it's not going to burst anytime soon that anyone can see. So I had a weird relationship with it after everything failed in Oakland, but then I realized that I was able to get started here, and my investors that supported me in Oakland, they came to me after all that failed, and they said, "Okay, well, whenever you're ready to start your own plant, we want to support you." So we've been able to get that off the ground. So it's going to be over here in Smyrna. We have a building and really incredible partners, incredible investment team. And we have 8 vinyl presses and a lot of the associated equipment we need. So we're beginning the build out. I don't know exactly when it's going to be done, because as you know, with construction things, you never set a date because you never really know. But right. I hope to be pressing some records pretty soon.
It would be hard to describe in one sentence what gives records a legendary sound, but it would be easy to describe in 3 letters: API. For more than 50 years, API Audio has created large format consoles for world-class studios. Famous for co-founder Saul Walker's circuit designs and the original 2520 op-amp, the sound of API consoles is the sound of great music. API now brings that legendary sound to your home studio with the Box, a small format console featuring the famous API circuitry that is the perfect analog addition to your digital studio. The Box gives you 8 recording channels on the left with built-in mic pre's, high-pass filters, direct inputs, and customizable 500 module slots, and 16 summing channels on the right. Or you can mix using all 24 channels, including aux sends, inserts, and silky smooth faders. API now offers a virtual console experience with a personalized online download demo of the box, 16082 or 2448 consoles. Sign up for your demo now at apiaudio.com. Making sure your vocal sounds amazing in your mix starts with capturing your voice perfectly. This means controlling sibilants and plosives at the mic. Back when I started out, we used to make pop filters out of pantyhose and a wire hanger, but not only did it not look good or smell great, but it also didn't sound all that great either. There's a reason that the Beastie Boys said they never rocked the mic with the pantyhose. Fortunately, pop filters have come a long way in the studio, and JZ Mics brings you the ultimate pop filter, built from solid metal parts that won't break and a flexible gooseneck for easy placement. The JZ Pop Filter uses a unique waveguide design that prevents plosives from getting through to the mic while letting important high frequencies through for clarity. Get your vocals just right and use the limited time coupon ROCKSTARS to get 20% off the amazing pop filter at jzmic.com. That's cool. Do you guys have a name you want to share yet, or is that
yeah? I mean, I'm happy to. At this point, I can share it. It's called Physical Music Products.
Dig it.
And utilitarian, straight to the point.
What about lessons learned, or any advice you have for somebody who's considering pressing their first vinyl? So, for example, I'm working on a 5-song EP. I'll be finishing it at some point, and realized, I mean, that's not a lot of music to put on vinyl, maybe, unless you pick a small one. But just that kind of advice for people who are out there listening, who are thinking about doing their first record pressing. What advice do you want to give to them to have a successful experience with that? I think it's really encouraging to remind people that this may be the best way to help pay for some of the process of making that record.
Right. So first of all, if you're going to make a vinyl record, you need to know that it's going to take a while. As the way the industry is right now, it's going to take a while. The lead times are anywhere between 4 and 6 months. Hopefully, once our plant is off the ground, I have a plan of being down to the 8 to 10 weeks zone again, which is a reasonable amount of time. But we'll see what happens. Potentially faster. But the important thing to remember is that it's not going to happen overnight. It's nowhere near as fast as even getting CDs made. And so be prepared for that. Also be prepared that, the setup costs are they're not nothing. So in order to get a lacquer cut, get the electroplating done, and then even to get the first round of test presses, you're probably in for around $1,000. So that's even before you press multiple copies of that record. Now, once you get through those setup costs, the actual price per unit goes down by a considerable amount the more you make. So if you're going to make 1,000 records, you're probably depending on how crazy your artwork gets and how if you have some kind of bunch of inserts, or you want color, you want like this batch of them to be colored this way and that batch to be marbled this way or whatever. It's going to raise your per unit cost. But just for a simple black, two sides black vinyl record with a simple jacket, you're probably around $2,800 to $3,200 for 1,000.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's pretty darn good to be able to make 1,000 records that you can then turn around and sell for even $20 a piece. That's $20,000 of income
now,
spending only $3,000.
Can you take, let's say you press 1,000 today and you've already done that setup. Is it the kind of thing where you can come back later and go, oh, let's press another 1,000, and that initial setup still is there ready? And
Generally, yes. If you've gone through what's called 3-step plating, even 2-step, you could probably get away with putting those stampers back on the machine and press a bunch more copies. But best, if you think you're going to make a reorder at some point, best to go through what's called 3-step plating, where they actually make another set of negatives that they can pull more stampers off. So stampers have a life on them. You can only make so. It's like a kitchen knife. Like if you cut if you cut through, if you cut through chicken bones enough times, you're going to dull your knife. Same idea with your stampers. So you have a certain life of number of records on your stampers that you'll want to spring for the extra. I think it's like $20 or something per side, generally, to have a 3-step plating process. So if you think you're going to make a reorder, I would suggest you go 3-step. So
Okay.
that's basically like some of the costs involved. I think it's really important to talk about money and get that out of the way first, because anything else is, unfortunately, I mean, the music industry is driven by money. Your ability to make a record is going to be driven by money. The second thing you need to pay attention to is the length of the record. Now, you mentioned that it's a 5-song EP. That's actually makes me really happy, because it's super hard to put a 10-song album on vinyl if the songs are each 3 to 4 minutes long, because your sweet spot for making that record is going to be somewhere around 14 to 17 minutes a side. Once you get above that, you're going to have to start making compromises for level, for bass level, and you will, once you get above 21 or 22 minutes, you're going to have to be down in level quite a lot. So if you want to cut a 30-minute side, you can, but it's going to be so quiet that you won't be really super stoked with it. It'd be better to cut off some of that program material, or have it go into multiple sides. So we make 3-side records all the time, 4-side records, because the content is so much that you have to do that. The other important thing to know is that you need to work with someone who is reputable and has a track record making vinyl records.
Yeah.
And if you're working with someone who doesn't, then you probably shouldn't be charged, accordingly. And
you're talking about the mastering
stage.
You're talking about sort of the plating stage, or the pressing stage?
The mastering stage. I mean, anyone who's pressing or plating knows what they're doing. There's no way you can stay in business without doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And most of the mastering engineers that are existent in these days know exactly what they're doing. But, someone who's mastering just digitally and says, I'm going to master this for vinyl, just understand what that means. It means that they're going to create a set of vinyl prep files, and then you're going to have to pay a lacquer cutter either through a broker or directly to make the actual lacquer master for you. So just to understand how those terms work. Now, the timing of the record is very important, as is the sequencing of the record. So if you're making vinyl for the first time, you remember, I'm sure that you remember back when you were buying records from the store, that toward the end of each side, you had a song that was more like a ballad, or a song that was a little bit more sparse. And the reason for that is because, remember, I was talking about the angle of playback incidence on a record. Once you get toward the center, you are going to be lacking in EQ response, and you're going to be lacking in loudness. And you're going to,
because the needle, the arm is like at a funny angle at this point. It's like crossing all the way across the record to reach that groove, right?
Right, exactly. So it's coming into the grooves at a different angle. So if you have a big, boisterous, loud, huge thing at the end of the record, it's not going to sound good, and it will not play back right. That's why there's these really cool records back they were from France. These really, really neat records that were put out for classical music, where they would play the record, they would cut the record inside out rather than outside in, so that at the end of the classical piece, usually the end of the classical piece usually is this big, exciting finale with, maybe clapping and things. So by the time you get to the inside of the record, if you cut it from outside in, it's not going to sound that good. But if you cut it from the inside out, this technique called pâté, P-A-T-H-E with an accent, you would be able to have a nice, big, loud, exciting finish without compromising the sound quality.
That's wild. I've never heard of that. That's pretty cool. And then I guess you just have to learn that to start your needle in the middle of the record, and then play out from there.
Center.
What do you think the Beatles did for A Day in the Life with the big piano crash at the end? I don't remember where that was on the album.
I don't know, but I mean, we really can cut anything. It just comes down to the the expectations of the client and understanding that vinyl is a very specific format, digital is a very specific format, tape is a very specific format. And I say limitations. Some engineers don't think of it that way, and that's totally fine. But I believe that everything has a set of limitations to its, to its usable quality. And vinyl has one set, digital has another set, tape has another set. But I think that it's, as long as there's that expectation, understanding that when you get your test presses back, they might have a little tick or a pop here and there. That doesn't mean someone did something wrong. It just means that it's vinyl. It's alive. It's literally putting grooves into plastic and then making lots of copies of them. You're going to have little weird things.
But usually we dig those weird things.
I totally do. But there is I think that there is a group of new vinyl listeners and new vinyl makers that have never really spent a lot of time with records that have imperfections. And that is partially because the records that we go and buy in stores today that were made years and years ago, they are probably the things that have survived. Think about the millions and millions of records that were made with imperfections that didn't survive. So the Take 5 record that we know and love so well is one of those survivors, Kinda Blue, another survivor, where we know that that's like a beautiful recording and a beautiful production. But think about all the millions of records that didn't survive for the last 40 years. And that's where we're at right now. So it's like, what records are going to survive 40 years from now are the ones that we pay attention to quality, we pay attention to the production process, we make choices that are going to be helpful for when we go to make the vinyl record. And then it's just about writing a good song.
Yeah.
Mastering is a guilty pleasure. It's been phenomenal to hear a client tell me that the master wasn't just perfect, but it was right. It connected. I love assisting with the mixing process by giving free feedback just because, if the mix feels some positive impact from my input, frankly, it'll be easier to master. At least 50% of the mastering is preparing the mix. If the mix is really good, most of the mastering is already done. It's much more of a conversation now from end to end. It shouldn't be a black art that's hidden behind closed doors. Shouldn't be a one-shot deal either. Even after the master is delivered, we can still work on it. We can even go back and make mix changes later and update the master for a fraction of the cost. That's the iterative master. I'm Brian Murphy of Sound Porter Mastering. Let's talk about how I can help elevate your mix into the best master possible. Contact me and get free feedback on your mix or a free master demo at soundporter.com.
Atom Audio designs monitors with a mission to bring accuracy, transparency, and high definition to your studio, guiding you each step of the way on your journey from starting out in a home studio to installing your ultimate mixing setup in your pro studio. Check out their complete line of speakers and headphones, from the T-Series to the AX Series to their top-of-the-line S-Series, which all use the unique ART accelerated ribbon tweeter design, famous for creating smooth, detailed imaging that lets your speakers disappear into your music. Won't it feel awesome to make brilliantly accurate, creative decisions in your mixes because you can finally hear your music clearly? Your ears are the greatest instrument you have, and if you can hear the music, then you can mix the music. Learn how to set up your studio monitors and control room for great sound, plus lots of other cool studio tips at atom-audio.com/education. Want to record killer drums in your home studio? Rockstars of Drums will show you how to record, edit, and mix pro-sounding drums with a Nashville session drummer in a Grammy-winning studio. Want to start mastering your own records? Rockstars of Mastering walks you through exactly how I mastered my own record using nothing but plugins in PreSonus Studio One. Want to learn how to create a mix that doesn't suck but rocks instead? At Mixmaster Bundle, I show you how to mix using stock and free plugins so that you can have punchy, powerful drums, guitars that rock, bass you can feel, and a mix that is in your face. Plus, it's totally free as my way of saying thanks for listening. Then go to mixmasterbundle.com to get started for free now and look for the clickable link in the show notes below. Well, so let me ask you this question regarding vinyl again. For this new vinyl creator, you've come up with the budget, you press your vinyl, you've got it. Any tips about actually handling and managing that vinyl after the fact and getting it? Do you just pop it in a box and mail it off to somebody? Is it a little more complicated than that? Is it just as easy as that? How do you want to get it to your fans?
It is kind of just as easy as that. This is part of our new business is finding is we've designed a way for us to send the records out on your behalf to your fans. So that's one option, but really it is as simple as, putting a shipping label on it, popping it in the mail, in a bubble mailer or something. Or, something that you could also send it media mail, which ends up being cheaper. But generally, I'm hoping for the days that we go back to shows and you can just, sell someone a record at your show.
Yeah. Well, I mean, one thing you got to remember, of course, is don't leave it in the heat. Don't let the sun see it. Right.
I was just going to say that. Make sure that it's a way that it's not going to get wet, because you don't want the artwork to get ruined. And then heat or any way that it could potentially get bent is not good. I mean, like there was this photo circulating around on the internet of like a mailman who had put the record in the mailbox and like bent it to fit it in there, which
nice.
is everyone's worst nightmare, of course. But I'm actually more afraid of like some of the crazy things that have happened with records where like one side is Beyonce and the other side is like a Canadian punk band. Stuff like that. Things like that happen. And so we all, you just got to roll with the punches and just understand. Right. Yeah.
What about storage? So is it smarter to lay your record, flat on a shelf and stack them, or have them all vertical standing next to each other?
You're going to want them all vertical, standing next to each other, probably with the spine out. I do this weird thing that I think a lot of people do, which is where your vinyl record, so you can't see me because I'm actually in the dark, but also you can't see me because we're on a podcast. But you take, I'm right-handed. So when I have a record and I pull the jacket, I take the jacket and I pull the sleeve with the record inside the sleeve out. And then I'll take my thumb and put it on the edge of the record that I can see through the jacket. And then I'll kind of put my hand into the sleeve and then take like usually my first finger or my middle finger is just the right length to sit into the hole, the center hole. And then I just gently pull the record out, holding it just with my middle finger in the center hole and then my thumb on the edge.
Yeah.
And you have a really good handle of it. And at that point, once it's free of the sleeve and the jacket, you can hold it from the sides in both hands, and then you can, gently put it on the turntable. That's one thing that's important is that you don't really want to hold it with your hand. Like you don't want to get your fingerprints in oil and things, because then dust will stick to that. You want to keep your records in a dust-free, cool environment, that hopefully doesn't have a lot of we have 3 dogs. So the dog hair is always difficult. Vicious. Yeah. But, it's important to keep your records clean. You can usually use a record brush once it starts spinning on the turntable. So you put it on the turntable, you start the turntable before you actually move the stylus and the tone arm over to the record itself. You take a record brush and just lay it across the record and let it spin under it for a little bit, get some of the dust off. And then from there, you're going to want to leave, when you have a turntable, there's always this little stand that the tone arm rests on. You're going to want to leave the tone arm up in that up position, move it over to the edge of the record, and then gently lower that stand to the point where then the record will, or the stylus will then gently ride in the lead-in groove. Some people that are disc jockeys and have been doing this for their whole lives can just, grab it and put it on the record and move on with their lives. I'm still just really careful with it all the time. But so there's that, that's like basic record handling 101. And then when you're
scratching for you?
No scratching for me. DJ P Pants has been retired. I'm just kidding. I think that I think that's important to say these things, because I remember the first time I held a record and I was like, I hope I don't fuck this up somehow. Hope I don't mess this up. And I had someone actually show me how to do it and how to hold it. And then when I went to go when you want to go put it back into the sleeve, you do the exact opposite of how you took it out. And then I actually do a 90-degree turn on the sleeve before it goes into the jacket, so that the edge of the record is not sticking out of the jacket, potentially getting damaged. Does that make sense?
I think so. Yeah. You mean you just give it a little bit of a spin so that it sort of rolls into the record a little more? Or you mean you 90-degree turn the
90-degree turn
sleeve so that it's the
right.
record's falling down into the sleeve while it's on the shelf?
Correct.
Gotcha.
Correct. So that the opening of the jacket only reveals the edge of the paper sleeve that is glued or folded.
Right.
And
Gotcha.
then the top of it is the open part of the sleeve, and that's already in and vertical inside the jacket.
Sweet.
Yeah.
All right. Well, so let's see. I don't know if I have any other questions about vinyl other than
there's one other thing
Yeah.
that I forgot. Sorry, about if you're getting into collecting vinyl. I'm sure that you're not sponsored by them or any competitors, but one cool thing is that you can actually catalog your entire collection on a website called Discogs. And Discogs will give you a ton of information about what your collection is worth. It'll help you to know what you have, so that when you go out to the record store and go buying again, you know what you've got. You can just pull it right up on your Discogs app on your phone. And then it'll also help you buy and sell records there as well on Discogs. It's a marketplace. So that's one cool thing to remember. And then
that's cool.
So there's some little bit of vinyl info for you.
That's groovy. Well, no, I do have more questions. So like, what about just getting your first turntable, or like where and how do you want to set that up so that, you don't have that experience where you're like, great, I'm playing my first record. And then you walk over to the couch to sit down and the thing skips right off the needle just skips right off the record.
Yeah. I've been thinking about putting this into like some sort of proper resource that's like with video and stuff and easy to use. A really good friend of mine is Alan Perkins, and he has an incredible company called Spiral Groove, which he, I think I'm not really sure if he's still running that or what, but Alan is the kind of guy that like reworked the math on how the tone arm and how the stylus tracks across the record based on like the length and position of the tone arm, and he was like able to to create a better way of the stylus riding in the groove, like what we talked about, where it's like got really bad frequency response on the inside and stuff. But Alan has been my resource for turntable setup, turntable tuning and all that stuff. So I've actually been considering maybe seeing if he would do something with me and we could put something together in a cool resource for beginners, like, learning about vinyl. But basically, when you're going to set up your turntable for the first time, first of all, make sure that your left and right channels are correct. So white and white, red and red. You're going to need a phono stage of some sort, which is going to amplify the signal of the sound coming off the stylus.
Mm-hmm.
You're also going to need a monitoring system of some sort that's going to, be either speakers or headphones and some sort of amplifier for those things. Now, when you put your turntable down and you go to set it up, you're going to have a few different parts and a few different angles that are very important, and a few different measurements that you need. Now we can get super duper like tweaky audio file if you want, or I can just like give you a couple of basic ways of doing it.
Just give us the basics for this one.
All right. So you're going to want to know that your tone arm, when it's laying on a record, your tone arm needs to be pretty much what's that word I'm looking for?
Parallel?
Level, parallel with the record.
Yeah.
Parallel with the record and level. So you'll want to start by leveling your making sure that your turntable is on a level surface. That doesn't cost you anything really. Then you want to make sure that when you put your tone arm down on the record, your stylus down on the record, tone arm is parallel with the record. Then from there, when you are on the outside and the inside of the record, you're going to want to see that the angle, it's called the VTA, the angle of the stylus is generally the same from the inside to the outside of the record, also staying parallel with the record. And then from there, you're going to have to make some decisions when you start hearing stuff. If it has too much high frequency or not enough high frequency, you're going to want to raise or lower the incidence of that stylus in the groove based on the back end of the tone arm. And then you're probably going to want to rock and roll stylus, or not the stylus, but the rock and roll, the cartridge at the end of the tone arm to get the right frequency balance. And then the last thing is that if you want to have more or less level and sound coming out, you have to make sure that the angle of the stylus that's actually riding in the groove, you might have to play around with that. The up and down, the vertical tracking angle.
Right.
So that's a few different things. And then, outside of having a force gauge and not really knowing how much weight is resting on that table, that's gonna be another thing. Lastly, in order to, you can get an approximation of that when you have your parallel tone arm practice, and then you take it and you put it on the record. If you put more weight on the end of the tone arm and you back it up off to the point where it's wanting to lift up off the record, that's not enough weight on the stylus. If you then, come back down and to the point where you can kind of get it to almost balance without the record there, and then you put the record on and it probably will play back okay. I mean, there's just so many things that go into it, but those are just a few ways that you can adjust stuff if you hear things that are wrong.
Do you feel like the time you've spent watching YouTube videos, trying out mix tricks, and tweaking version after version of your mixes has gotten you nowhere? Have you been looking for a simple, straightforward, step-by-step process for creating a pro mix that won't take years to learn? What if you could have a Grammy-winning mix engineer who understood all your mixing struggles and could coach you through them? If you struggle with any of these questions, then the Ultimate Mixing Masterclass is just for you. Now you can discover a proven step-by-step mix system from Grammy-winning mixer Craig Alvin for consistently creating a pro-quality mix from your home studio that will sound amazing everywhere. When you're ready to take your mixes to Grammy-winning quality, then get started at ultimatemixingmasterclass.com. Wow, that's fascinating. Yeah, it sounds like there's definitely some digging in to do. And I don't know if every turntable is going to offer you all those. Maybe they do. Maybe a good one maybe gives you a bunch of those features.
Yeah, I mean, even the most basic ones, the most basic ones, like the Audio Technica, like the $65 Audio Technica one, that has like a USB out. That table will already have been optimized for playback in the best way possible. So you will probably be able to pull it out of the box, put the little feet on it, put the top on it, and then put a record on, and it'll probably play back as good as it's going to.
Right. Okay.
Once you get up into the $300, $400, $500 range, then there are a few features, like what I said, like with weights on the end of the tone arm, and your ability to rock and roll the left to counterclockwise and clockwise the style or the cartridge on the tone arm, stuff like that. But yeah, generally, like if you put your record on and it's either skipping, then it doesn't have enough weight. If it is not loud enough, not full enough, then that means that there's something wrong with the way that the stylus is riding in the grooves. And so you're going to want to use the X, Y, and Z axes to adjust that stylus.
Okay. And that X, Y, and Z stuff, you find that down at the stylus, or you find that back on the tone arm somewhere?
That's going to be a combination of the cartridge itself on the tone arm or the angle of the tone arm from the back of it. So at the cantilever at the back, you're going to find that if you raise in height or lower in height, literally that apparatus that holds the tone arm on the back right corner of the turntable, then that will change the angle that your stylus is going to ride in those grooves.
Dig it. Rockstars, if you're listening to this and you have the ability to comment on the podcast or on the video, if we're on YouTube right now, feel free to drop in any questions, and we'll see if we can maybe get Piper's attention and see if we can get answers for you. But I think that that's a great idea for you to make the video series, Piper. It's pretty clear that there's some visuals you need to see to really get this stuff, I think.
Yeah, I think it would be a fun exercise too, because there's so many people that are really, really into vinyl, but everybody's in sort of like fractured, spaces now. So I think it'd be really neat to have a cool little series to show that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, that's pretty much all you need to know. I mean, just understand that vinyl is going to be beautiful, raw, alive, organic. It's going to sound incredible, but it is not the same as your digital release of the exact same record. Okay. The digital has more headroom, more frequency spectrum, more stereo spread, especially in the low end, and is going to be able to be played back over and over and over and over and over again forever. What it doesn't have is life, a lot of depth, real dimension, something that you can hold in your hands and marvel at the artwork, because musical artists are not just musical artists. A lot of them are also visual artists, or they express themselves with messages and words to you, the audience, the listener, and the fan, and they want to express themselves that in that way. And that is what drives a lot of artists to make vinyl, not just, here's this cool thing that I can sell. It's that they literally are exploding with expression, and just doing it in the musical audio domain is not enough sometimes.
That's cool. Exploding with expression. Well, you've been exploding with expression on this podcast, and thank you for sharing so many great insights into vinyl, getting us excited about, creating it ourselves, and just understanding a little bit more about how to both listen to it back and understand what's going on in the process. We are at the end of our interview, but let me close out with a question that I like to ask all of our guests, Piper. This one is hypothetical. Okay. And we're going to take the Wayback Studio machine. You get a chance to go back in time, find your young self, maybe in your old mastering studio, maybe long before that. And you say, listen, I've come back to give you this one bit of advice. Here's the single most important thing that you need to know to be a rock star of the recording studio yourself one day. What advice would you go back and give yourself at the, beginning of this process, if you could?
Oh man, that's a good one. So I had to do that actually today, which is don't be afraid to cut ties with relationships and working relationships that are not working. That is a lesson that I have had to learn over and over and over again, because I care so deeply about the folks that are in my life and that I want to take care of. And that sometimes leads to projects that go on way too long by, like what we said earlier about, people that tweak forever. That includes working relationships that are not equitable. That includes clients that may want something from you that you just cannot deliver. You have to be able to say no sometimes. And that even, translates into the amount of effort and work and stress that we professional engineers put into our business and I almost said our life, but really our business is our life. And to admit at any point that there's something that's not working takes a lot, especially from someone like me, who I just give everything I have to whatever I'm working on at that time. And that is something that I really wish that I had learned earlier. I'm still learning it, but I'm starting to get it a little bit. So, that might, maybe you were looking for like, if you raise the attack time on your compressor, you'll get a little bit more kick out of the drums and the vocal. Or, don't use that stereo width knob because it'll collapse your mix eventually, or it won't translate into small speakers. Or, hey, make sure that you listen back to every single version of every single song that you put out, every resolution for each file, because you never know what the computer is going to do. Or, make sure you make sure you take care of the people that are taking care of you.
Yeah.
How's that for extra?
That's great. I mean, it sounds like advice. We just got all those bonuses right there. Awesome, Piper. Thank you so much for hanging with us on Recording Studio Rockstars. I look forward to just hanging out in person again as soon as we're ready to do that. Maybe by the time this comes out, we'll be back in that kind of place again. But let the Rockstars know where they can go find you online.
Yeah.
Where should they be looking if they're curious about getting their next vinyl record ready to go or pressed? What do they need to know?
Well, you can find me anytime on the internet. If you literally just Google me, my name is Piper, Piper. Last name is Payne, Payne. You can find me on my website, piperpayne.com. Or if there's anything mastering related, you can find me at infrasonic.com/Piper. That's infrasonicsonsound.com/Piper. And then also on the internet, socials. My Instagram is SF_mastering. My Twitter is SF Mastering. I'm on Facebook and I'm in the Yellow Pages. So you can send a carrier pigeon.
Awesome. And then Rockstars, of course, we put together a great playlist, a Spotify playlist, if you want to go listen to Piper's work. It's a wonderful collection of stuff, everything from classical music to I heard stuff that I don't know if I call it jazz necessarily, or I mean, I heard like there was some solo piano stuff that felt like it was leaning that direction, but just like great punk stuff, great like deep bass, drum grooves and stuff like that. We didn't even talk about drums. You're a drummer.
Oh yeah. Well, next time. RSR299.
Yeah. So check that out. It's in the show notes. Just scroll down or click through and you can go listen to that stuff. And Piper, thanks for hanging with us.
I'm so grateful to be here. Thanks so much.
All right. We'll see you soon. We'll see you around the studio.
Right on.
Cheers. Thanks so much for listening to Recording Studio Rockstars. If you enjoyed the show and want to help make it better, then please share this episode with your friends on social media and leave a rating and review on iTunes to help the podcast reach more rock stars like yourself. You can click directly over to iTunes or go to rsrockstars.com/review for an easy explanation. And remember to hit the subscribe button to keep up with weekly episodes. And if you're ready to make your best record ever now, then head over to Recording Studio Rockstars Academy, where you can start with my free course at mixmasterbundle.com. And if you want more free content from Recording Studio Rockstars, all you have to do is go to rsrockstars.com/email. Again, that's rsrockstars.com/email to enter your name and email, and I'll keep you in the loop with articles, videos, podcast updates, and even free gear giveaways for your studio. Just look for the link in the show notes below. Thanks so much for listening, and thanks for being a rock star. I'm Lid Shaw, and this is Recording Studio Rockstars. Now, go make great music. Recording Studio Rockstars would like to give a big thank you to our amazing sponsors who help make this episode possible. Soundporter Mastering, OWC, Atom Audio, API Audio, Spectra 1964, Isotope, and JZ Microphones. Remember to get your free mastering demo at soundporter.com and use the coupon code ROCK10 at Isotope for 10% off any plugin purchase, or start your 7-day free subscription trial to get access to lots of their plugins. And use the coupon code ROCKSTARS at jzmic.com for 20% off this very pop filter you're hearing right now for a limited time. You will find links to all these wonderful sponsors in our show notes. These are all things I highly recommend for your studio. They're going to help you make your best record ever. I would also like to thank our fantastic team here at Recording Studio Rockstars: Vlad Weselchenko, Braden Stremming, Hugh McDonald, and John Richardson for additional podcast and video production. You guys rock. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode. Cheers.